I was invited a few days ago as a keynote speaker at ECIR24 in Glasgow, and I thought it could be great to record this. So here is my talk that I gave as a keynote speaker there. Keynote was about our role as scientists in the age of LLMs in shaping the future for endangered and low-resource languages. Adiciats a tutti, da començar che voleri remerciarlos che mi hanno convidato a questa conferenza. Soy hero onorado. I could have recorded this into a video, automatically translated into different languages, and even my lips would have matched the word in the different languages. But could I have given this talk in Gascon? Is Gascon, the language that I just spoke, a language for science? Or is English more appropriate here? Being here in Scotland with Scot Gaelic speakers, I dream a world. We are equipped with some devices. I can speak my mother tongue and you will hear your mother tongue. In that word, I can speak politics, laicity, food, and you can perfectly understand what I mean. Interpreters are no more needed, but languages are saved as well as the culture they convey. According to François Grosjean, half of the population is bilingual at different levels, but we speak different languages for different occasions. My mother tongue is French, and I use it every day in any occasions. Gascon is one of the Occitan languages, and I love to speak it with some friends. English is the one I use for research. Even we spoke Globish in some meetings where there are non-French speakers. Indeed, English is an international linked language with about 400 million first language speakers and 1.5 to 2 billion speakers. This is not by chance that English was the first spring in our research in information retrieval and natural language processing. But doing that, haven't we put other languages to the side? Can we make up for those languages now with LLMs? According to ethnologue.com, there are more than 7,000 languages that are spoken nowadays around the world, but 40% of them are endangered. But what is a language? Is it just a way to communicate? When I hear that, I get goosebumps. This is not just a language here. This is my culture that echoes. Indeed, the roles of languages are many. It's part of our identity. It's used for education. It's used for influence and power, but also for art and cultural transmission. It's a language that gives birth to a people, not the other way around. This adage, credited to San Isidore de Sevilla, shows the profound role that a language plays in our social and cultural identity. What is my identity as an Occitan? Well, according to Northerners a few centuries ago, Occitan is a people who lacks of seriousness, is talkative, greedy, and poor Latinist. But things have changed a lot. This to say that when we work, we shouldn't think that we work on text only, but also on the culture and the values that this language conveys. And indeed, many seems to be aware that something important is at stake with LLMs. Iceland was very proud that Icelandic language was chosen for the development in GPT-4 a few months ago. Also, an LLM with Croatian, Bosnian, Serbian, and Montenegrin was announced. Taiwan is developing their LLMs. And Nora would be the LLM for Norwegian. So why developing language-centric LLMs? First, it's probably to avoid artificial intelligence divide for the population. Also because we have observed lower abilities on smaller languages in large LLMs. But it's also to preserve the distinctive character of the language. And we want the text that will be automatically generated to be consistent with the culture and the value of the people who speak this language. The problem with low resource and endangered languages is that there is not a lot of data to train LLM from scratch. But the concept of low resource languages covers many different situations. Amharic, for example, is an elephant language. It is spoken by more than 100 million people in Ethiopia. It is vital and it is also institutional. However, it's a low resource language because the digital resources and the NLP tools are scarce. Occitan is very different. It's an endangered language. It's no more the norm that children learn and use it. There are a few online dictionaries as well as a machine translator. But the situation of languages change. Occitan is a Romance language. It was vital until the 4th century, and the troubadours are well known for their poems on courtly love. Then Occitan declined for different reasons, and the revival effort came late. So low resource languages covers various situations. In his paper, Liu depicts 3 typical situations for low resource languages. Elephant languages with 10 or more million L1 speakers, millions of L2 speakers, with a standard orthography. It's institutional. The needs are more for the support of the use of speech application or information retrieval or maybe mobile application. For that, it will be very easy to access to digital material. Also, industry will be interested, and so financial resources can be found. Coyote languages are very different. The need are for the support of the use of the language, its preservation, or its documentation and instruction. We can help. We will find a handful of L1 speakers, maybe elders, some L2 speakers as well. We will need to collect the data, to curate it. For that, we won't find any industry interested, and so little money. In their papers, they also define a 3rd type of languages. But why keep a language alive? It's how cultural heritage. A language is a repository of a community. It can help us understand history, like how monuments, for example. It's also a question of diversity, because a language reflects the way we understand the world. We know that, for example, Inuits have many, many words for snow and ice. And we also know that French is a more romantic language. And we don't want this diversity to disappear, do we? So what does that mean to work on low resource and endangered languages? This is a SWOT on a researcher's point of view. On the strengths, we can innovate and contribute much more than for English, for which almost everything has been already done. By working on low resource languages, we may also be able to understand better the diversity on high resource languages. It's also a question of diversity and inclusion of new researchers for which these languages matter. On the weaknesses, there is limited financial support and limited human resources, but we can probably influence on that. On the threat, we have to be quick because many languages are disappearing and the community are small. So we have to convince them that we can work together. With regard to opportunities, we can find very engaged people. For those who like to work on multidisciplinary way, it's really an opportunity. We can also work on shared tasks. I want here to recall the importance of shared tasks. In information retrieval, this is now the norm for more than 30 years. We learn to work on control environment in a scientific way with reproducible method and evaluation metrics. With TREC, we started with English information retrieval, and then very quickly we went to cross-lingual information retrieval, although English being one language of the pair. Share task on low resource languages started a few years ago. We can mention nuclear with Persian as a median resource language, but also FIRE with Urdu and Syral with cross-lingual information retrieval. There are also many tasks in natural language processing that focus on low resource languages. But what is the situation in the era of LLMs? LLMs open new opportunities for low resource and endangered languages. Let's us have a look on some of the aspects of the technology. But before that, I would like to recall the importance of embeddings. In the monolingual case, the words that are similar in meaning will be represented close one to the other in the semantic space. Likewise, in bilingual or multilingual cases, two words that have similar meaning in different languages will be close one to the other in the semantic space. This has opened many applications for LLMs in the multilingual case. First of all, I would like to show you a little bit about prompt engineering in the case of low resource languages. Prompt engineering aims to leverage the knowledge that has been encoded in PLMs, and it works pretty well even for scarce data. So first of all, I'm going to use it as a network regressive prompting. That means that I'm going to ask it to predict the next token in the form of continue the story. But I start by prompting it in Gascon. Here, continuo lo texte, je sabinkunte. And it works pretty well with ChatGPT-4 here, where the text is continued in Gascon. I wrote in red when it is wrong and in green what I had preferred. But nevertheless, it works pretty well. I also use it in a bilingual way or multilingual way, rather. Here in English and Gascon, continue the story, je sabinkunte. Here you can see that English has completely overweighted Gascon, and the story is continued in English, which is not the case when I do that in multilingual English and French, two high resource languages. Here the story is continued in French. So that means that we will need to put more effort in prompt engineering for low resource environments. Also, another important comment here is that for low resource environment, we cannot just simulate them because we never know what the PLM has really seen. Now I'm going again in 3 languages. I'm going to work with the retrieval-based prompting. That means that I ask the PLM to retrieve something for me. Here I'm going to ask stories for children that would be written in Occitan. I ask that in English, in French and Gascon. When asking in English, it doesn't retrieve anything, in fact, and it's just saying that it cannot find. When I ask in French, it's the perfect result because I receive 3 relevant links, no hallucinations, and the description that are correct associated to those links. In Gascon, it's just talkative and provide some explanation on where and how I could find the stories, but it doesn't give me any links. So the conclusion here is that we have to know what LLMs knows. And it's not very easy, even for open PLMs. Also, another conclusion is that English prompting is not always the best. I could have tried other type of prompting, few-shot prompting, or chain of thought prompting. All these are quite useful to leverage the information that has been encoded in PLM for high-resource languages and to apply that to low-resource languages. Also, Sheila Theo explained how she won the first prompt engineering competition. I'm going to challenge her on Gascon. There is also a very nice overview in ACM computing survey a few months ago. On fine-tuning, Arteche, who is Basque, by the way, wanted the model to be language agnostic. So his model, I've seen 93 languages, but then for training on the tasks, the training is done only on high-resource language, English. And then it shows that you can perform the task on the other languages with no explicit training. Also on transfer learning, Zoff and his colleagues work on machine translation. In that case, what they did, they trained the model on a high resource pair, here French to English, and then they transfer the weights to a new model with a new pair, Uzbek to English. And to do that, they have frozen the embeddings of English, but left the embeddings for French to be fine-tuned. And this embedding was fine-tuned to Uzbek. So the idea here is that at one point you can leverage the knowledge that you have trained on high resource languages to lower resource languages. So this is very useful when you have or less data. Instruction fine-tuning is also very interesting for low resource environment. Rather than training on just plenty of examples or prompting to leverage the knowledge of the system like A and B, in instruction fine-tuning, you combine both. So you combine the training on instruction plus examples. And this is very interesting, the most that you can self-instruct from document the model. I could also have talked about retrieval augmented generation, but in the case of low resource environment, the problem is that you have not a lot of sources on which you can search for. To provide additional information, knowledge graph may be a better solution for low resource languages. Indeed, they can provide structural information that LLMs lack of. For low resource languages, there can be dictionaries, grammar rules, or other resources that describe the language. LLMs can also help in building those descriptions for languages that lack of. So we have plenty of technologies, but what do users need? When Tilahun and Addis Ababa University contacted me, they wanted to contribute to change the low resource situation of Amharic for information retrieval. There was some data and some NLP tools, but non-open data. So Tilahun thought the other way around, and we decided that we should develop open data. Tilahun was very engaged, and as a result of his PhD, there is now an ad hoc information retrieval test collection, as well annotated corpora verified by linguists, and embeddings. Everything open. I also found the same through engagement of students working on their mother tongue in Madagascar. On Occitan, Miriam Ra and her colleagues are very engaged as well. they started a tree bank on Occitan. A tree bank is a structured database where sentences are annotated with a grammatical structure. So it's very important for linguistic analysis. And the universal dependency is a project that wants to use a uniform representation for all the languages so that cross-lingual linguistic analysis is now possible. What is crucial for endangered languages is to document the language, but manual annotation is very long. So what languages do is they use cross-lingual annotation. For that, they choose a language which is close to the target language and for which some NLP tools exist or annotation tools exist. Then they annotate the text with that tool, they assess and correct, and then using reinforcement learning, they retrain the annotation tool. So as a result of this process, they have both a new tool for that target language, as well as annotated corpora. Also, what endangered languages need is a media presence with up-to-date content. And LLMs can help in providing content for different audiences, for example, for social media. I can also speak about my personal needs as a president of an association which organizes a festival of traditional dances. I need to have the documents written in different languages, including Occitan, but the volunteers are not many who can do that. And so an automatic translator would be very welcome. I also talked to Titres. They are composers in Occitan and Gascon, but they are also teachers in bilingual schools. And what they need is some books and resources in Gascon. What they do usually is they take French books that follow the French program and translate them manually. So based on those needs, I thought it was maybe important to devote one section of my talk to machine translation. Machine translation is not new in information retrieval. It was seen as an obvious choice for cross-lingual information retrieval. And the idea at that time was to translate either the query or the document into English, so that then we come back to a monolingual English information retrieval task. Done. In fact, machine translation started with bilingual dictionaries and rules written manually so that you can translate one sentence in one language to another language. With bilingual corpora-based machine translation started. In example-based machine translation, for example, the idea is to retrieve similar sentences in bilingual corpus. With transformers, generative translation is now the most used. Also started in 2020, a lower source track in machine translation conference. What we need for machine translation is data, and there are more and more open data and projects. For example, Common Crawl and Opus are open data, but they are just collected data with no curation and no manual annotations. Also, the Universal Declaration of Human Rights, also, as well as different religious books, exist in different languages, almost aligned. There are also open data, for example, FLOR 200 is probably the most known, where you have English sentences that are translated in about 200 languages. Aya is the latest one with a prompt and the completion text in more than 100 languages and 500 million of instances. Let's go to some results. Here, XX mean one or several languages other than English. It has been shown that machine translation is easier to go to English than from English, meaning that English generation seems to be easier. But what are the reasons? Is it because of the linguistic imperialism of English? Is it because we have plenty of data in English? Or is it because our research and development focus first on English? Also, English has a quite straightforward grammatical structure with less inflections and fewer grammatical general considerations than other languages. On the other hand, data collection may be biased because most of the time we take English, then translate it into different languages for making the ground truth. That means that back translation is probably easier. Some research have also shown that knowledge on the target data would be key. Also that it seems to be easier for languages that are similar to English. In fact, the interrelation between the huge effort we put on English and those results are not clear. And we don't know either if those results could generalize to other languages than English. I'm a little bit concerned by this XX, because XX is varied, in fact, that corresponds to different languages. Let me show you a typical table that can be reported on the results. Here, the results are measured in terms of blue, which is an automatic measure. Here reported in between 0 and 100. Look at how Armenian with 3.4 and Scott Gaelic with 66 contribute the same to the average. I don't like the idea of averaging those results across the languages. Indeed, we have done that a lot in information retrieval with mean average precision, for example, that average is the result on different queries for the precision. But for those who know my work on query performance prediction and adaptive query processing, you also know that I don't want to consider one query among plenty, but rather to see what we can do for each of the queries, because behind a query, there is a user. We should respect the languages more, because behind XX, there is a people. I have another concern. It's about what LLMs produce. They produce text in different languages, but will languages lose more than they will? Can we learn languages from text? Most of us lecture, and we know that we need some illustrations, some examples. This is what can be text produced by LLMs. But we also need rules in order to generalize and in order to explain the concepts. Do we want to delegate this to the LLMs? Will we have to rediscover the languages from the generated texts? Isn't it what we are doing now, trying to understand what LLMs really do? So, what are the new directions? I have the feeling that never before systems have been so greedy. They need more data, more parameters, more context, more modes, languages, tasks. Do we want a system that do everything? Do we want to reproduce that for a new language, any new language? This is tempting because LLMs can do a lot, but can we do that for the 7,000 languages that exist? And do you want to do that, whatever the energy that we need, even in terms of footprint? Or is it time now to go toward degrowthing? Less parameter means that we need less data to train, also less energy. Maybe it is time now to rediscover small is beautiful. Mistral may have launched the fashion for lightweight models. There are plenty of applications that have been developed for economic reasons to put them in our mobiles, but maybe there will be also some applications for low resource and endangered languages. So I think that endangered languages are very varied, but also they share many things. They share the specific challenges, the lack of. Maybe also the fact that the automatic generated data is more frequent than the manually generated one that pose quite a lot of challenges. Also, each community is more like rare earth. But all the users all together, maybe could we put some common effort on some endangered languages for a butterfly effect on many of them? Users have also the same concerns, and we have to convince the communities that their data, their treasure is better in our hand than on their only, and that we can work together, and that we don't want the world to be blue only. A final concern is that maybe could we work on languages for other reasons than utilitarian ones, for what, because of war, because of cybercrime, because of markets. Couldn't we work on languages for fun, culture, and diversity? Or I almost forgot to say that, of course, not all the languages have a written form. That's other type of challenges. I would like to thank colleagues and friends who helped me in many ways to prepare this talk. And I would like to thank again ECIR organizer for having invited me for this keynote.